Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deepak Garg, and I am the convener of the promotion panel of ICMA and MD of Sun India. Welcome you all to this session, second in the series, Together We Defeat the Difficulty, powered by ICMA. I would like to thank everyone for joining us for today's webinar on women and child healthcare in COVID times. I shall introduce you to the eminent panelists present today. And if you have any questions during the discussion, please type them into the question box, which we can take up at the end of the session if the time permits. Firstly, we have with us Mr. Sandeep Singh, President of ICMA and Managing Director of Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery. We have with us Dr. Sonia Mittal. She's a Principal Consultant Pediatric at Max Super Specialty Hospital and has more than 25 years of experience. She has been managing the COVID positive kids in all categories from mild to moderate to sick since last 15 months. Dr. Sagar Bhattad is the first DM super specialist in field of pediatric immunology in India and has managed several of COVID patients. And currently he is involved in development of digital platform for multi-system inflammatory syndrome under the aegis of Indian Academy of Pediatrics. With this app, nationwide data on MIS-C will be collected. We have with us Dr. Mamta Mittal. She's gynecologist with over 30 years of experience and has been managing all types of COVID-related cases after the onset of pandemic. She's an expert on handling the deliveries of COVID-positive mothers, which has been very challenging and quite sensitive. We also have with us Dr. Ananya Mahapatra. She's resource personnel with South Delhi's Legal Service Authority, who helps in organizing workshops with students of senior classes on academic stress during COVID-19 pandemic. And she's also a co-investigator in a research project on anxiety and stress due to depression in pregnant women during COVID-19 pandemic at ESIC. Now I would like to invite Mr. Sandeep Singh, President ICMA, to share his views, please.
Good afternoon, Deepak. Thank you very much. I'm sure all my friends, colleagues are safe, hale and hearty. And I'm sure most of you would have attended our first session of ICMA COVID-19 Expert Talk Series, which was on understanding COVID-19 and held on 14th of May. We received very good feedback for the session. I'm glad that these sessions are of help to our member company employees and their families. Continuing with COVID-19 Expert Talk Series, I welcome you today to the second session of the series. As Deepak mentioned, the theme is Women and Child Healthcare in COVID-19 COVID times. As you know, we are all passing through very challenging times when the entire nation is in the grip of second wave of COVID-19. While COVID-19 has been widespread in its reach and has impacted all segments of the society, women and child healthcare especially needs to be given utmost importance. This wave of the virus has seen an impact on all, including infants and children. Especially this time, it has impacted them most. We hope to understand from our panelists what specific actions can be taken for their protection, and in the event of any such occurrence, what are the specific steps that need to be taken. And we are looking forward to hear from you. Women, as you know, are the core of the well-being of our families, and it is essential that in this time of crisis, we support both their physical and mental health. And we would like to have questions on this aspect. As part of the Expert Talk series on women and child healthcare in COVID times, we will talk to medical experts to understand what are the right precautions, treatments, care that women and children need to take under this crisis. So once again, it is my pleasure to welcome esteemed speakers, Dr. Sonia Mittal, Dr. Sagar, Dr. Mamta Mittal, and Dr. Ananya. I also welcome my colleague, Deepak Garg, who is the convener of promotion panel in ICMA, is also the managing director of Seni Heavy Industries. Before we start this session, I would like to highlight some of the key actions which we have taken as ICMA with the support of our member companies. As an ICMA, we have contributed substantially.
90% in first wave. In second wave, almost 60 to 70% were asymptomatic, but children did show mild symptoms. So in this wave, we are seeing children having symptoms in the form of, now we come to our second part of question, what symptoms? Symptoms commonly are fever, cough, sore throat. These are the three main symptoms which children present, and they are, non-differentiable from any flu, because any flu child gets will have the similar symptom. So it is difficult to differentiate clinically whether this symptom fits in flu, normal flu, common cold, or COVID. But they will have simple symptom like this. And in this wave, we saw that a lot of GI symptoms were also showing in kids. So that means there were a lot of diarrhea, abdominal pain, and few children will have headache, body ache, lot of pains, weakness, and occasionally children who became more sick will have breathlessness. So the symptoms were same as of any other flu. And in this, generally, when I see patients in my clinic, I always ask family history, because family history is very, very important, especially in small kids who are not going out of house. If their parents or grandparents or somebody in the family has become positive, even if the children have having very mild symptoms, they might have contacted the infection. So family history also becomes very important. So whenever I get a case of fever, cough, cold, I always ask, is anybody in your family suffering from similar complaints? And has anybody got COVID recently in the family? So second wave was little more infectious, and the children showed more symptom as compared to first wave, and symptoms were almost same as any flu. I hope I have answered.
Yes, just for benefit of all, I'll just quickly summarize it in Hindi. कि 90% पिछली वेव में लोग बिना, हमारे बच्चे जो थे बिना सिम्टम्स के पास निकल गए थे, अगर उन्हें हुआ भी तो हमें पता नहीं चला. लेकिन इस वेव में बच्चों को काफी इसका असर हुआ है, और इसके मेन सिम्टम जो हमको देखने हैं बच्चों में, अगर बुखार है, खांसी है, गले में खराश है, ये कुछ सिम्टम है बच्चों में कोविड पॉजिटिव होने के आज की तारीख में. और उसके ऊपर डायरिया, सिर दर्द या बदन दर्द, ये भी कुछ सिम्टम्स हैं जो कि कोविड की तरफ इशारा करते हैं. एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण चीज है कि जो हमारी फैमिली, हमारे परिवार में और किसी को अगर हुआ है तो वो भी अपने पास जानकारी होना जरूरी है, जिससे कि बच्चों को उसी हिसाब से ध्यान रखा जा सके. Mr. Sandeep Singh, any questions from your side on this? Okay, Dr. Sonia, once a child has, sorry.
Yeah. So I think Deepak, on the same line, my question to Dr. Sonia Mittal only, that once the child has been tested positive or considered to be positive, I have gone through this experience with one of my colleagues, and all the members have also gone positive. It's quite obvious that then he's positive, all other members have also positive, parents have gone positive. And what is the line of treatment one should take under this scenario? What should they do, especially from when they are very young, between few months to 1 year or 2 years old?
Yeah, see, this has been, as my practical experience and most of our colleagues, the practical experience is that COVID is generally, it passes off as a mild infection. It just passes off as flu in children. Only thing is children who are above 13, who are obese and who have some comorbidities, like उनको अगर साथ में किडनी की डिजीज है, लंग डिजीज है, हार्ट डिजीज है, या कोई कैंसर की ट्रीटमेंट पे चल रहा है, they are at high risk. And similarly, less than 1 year, 1 साल से कम के जो बच्चे हैं, उनमें इन्फेक्शन थोड़ा सा ज्यादा हिट कर सकता है strongly. But most of the children between 1 to 13 years, they just pass off, with mild symptoms. So first of all, we have to tell our parents, reassure our parents, कि please don't be scared. आप डरिए मत, बच्चों में ये बहुत mild होता है. And they have to just observe for fever. In fact, pulse oximeter भी बच्चों में, छोटे बच्चों में, I say no, because उनकी उंगलियां पतली होती हैं, they are not steady. The oxygen pulse oximeter shows low, and then they panic. So in fact, I would say कि उसमें pulse oximeter की भी जरूरत नहीं है. They to just observe for fever. उसका यूरिन ठीक करता रहे बच्चा ठीक से खा पी रहा है, एक्टिविटी लेवल कैसा है, उस पर सब नजर रखें। अगर बच्चा ठीक चल रहा है, एक्टिविटी भी ठीक ठाक है, सुसु कर रहा है, छोटे बच्चों में भी से एवरी 4 hourly, बड़े बच्चों में एटलीस्ट 6 to 8 hourly. If child is passing urine, that means his intake is all right. He's able to walk, he's able to speak well. So in children, you may not get pulse oximeter में saturation low, but they become breathless in talking. They cannot speak one sentence in a go. So वो सब चीजें हमें soft signs देखने हैं. And parents have to be reassured कि ये जो वायरस हुआ है, कोविड हुआ है, जनरली ये 3-4 दिन में निकल जाएगा. 4-5 दिन के बाद अगर persist करता है, they have to report to me. No investigations चल रहे हैं, okay? And अगर बच्चे को फीवर 103-4 जा रहा है on second, third day, then also they have to report to me. So in first 4-5 days, we hardly do anything. We just reassure them कि ये पास हो जाएगा, ये अपने आप निकल जाएगा ठीक से. आप चिंता बिल्कुल मत करिए बच्चे की, और इसको नॉर्मल हेल्दी डाइट खिलाइए, पानी पिलाइए, इसकी सुसु पे नजर रखिए, इसकी जनरल एक्टिविटी पे नजर रखिए. If these things are all right, generally believe me, we have hardly to, the admission rate, in fact, I've dug in the literature, the admission rate is 0.1 to 1.9%, which is very, very low. So we hardly have to admit any child.
Right.
So mostly they will pass off as mild symptoms.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Dr. Sonia, is just going forward on this, is there any defined protocol in case of kids for tests or a kind of line of treatment that is required after testing positive?
See, in fact, most of the time we don't have to do anything. I'm telling you, very frankly. I've been treating patients in and out, and I've been in touch with, on teleconsultation, physical consultation, I've been seeing in clinic. We don't have to do anything. 98-99%, which is a huge number, they will pass off as mild symptom, and उसमें मुझे कोई टेस्ट नहीं करना है. जैसे कि मैंने आपको ऑलरेडी बोला है, अगर 4-5 दिन में बच्चे को बुखार आके चला जाता है, I don't do anything. अगर बच्चे को, सपोज बच्चा छोटा है, जैसे recently 3-4 days back I had a 1.5 months old kid with high grade fever and diarrhea. In fact, they came to me with fever and diarrhea. So if a 1.5-old child is having fever to the tune of 102 or 103 with diarrhea, I have to anyway investigate. So we just send basic investigations like CBC, CRP, and in elder children, like I said, adolescent is another high risk group. So in those, we will add D-dimer and one, just SGPT creatinine, just liver and kidney, covering all that. So we just add on those tests. But generally, we don't have to follow any protocol because children, as I said, 97-98% will pass off with mild disease. So we don't have to do anything. It is case-to-case basis. But if children, they continue to have fever after 5 days, 4 to 5 days, and it is progressing or it is increasing or it goes very high, then we have to do investigations. And जरूरी नहीं है कि बच्चे में कोविड ही हो, बच्चे में दूसरी भी बीमारियां हो सकती हैं, तो हमें अपनी, बिकॉज कोविड पर से इज अ माइल्ड डिजीज, तो इनफैक्ट अगर किसी बच्चे में 103 बुखार जा रहा है तो मुझे और भी बीमारियों के बारे में सोचना पड़ेगा और टेस्ट करने पड़ेंगे. तो आई थिंक वी हैव टू कीप आवर हॉरिजॉन ओपन and should not be scared and panic, and same way we have to reassure our parent it is very, very mild, and most of the children we have treated, the mortality rate is very, very low. So I think we have to just reassure the parent that these are the warning signs. As I already said, warning signs, अगर बुखार 4 से 5 दिन बाद persist कर रहा हो, या बहुत हाई जाए, या बच्चे का ओरल इंटेक कम हो, या बच्चा बहुत उल्टियां या दस्त कर रहा है जिसकी वजह से बच्चे का हाइड्रेशन खराब हो रहा है, या बच्चा ब्रेथलेस हो रहा है, या उसका सेंसोरियम कम हो रहा है, then they have to contact the doctor, their treating pediatrician. So no protocols. Mild cases, just we say, जिसमें सिर्फ गला खराश होता है, 90%, 95% will just cause up कि हल्का गला खराश हुआ, हल्का बुखार हुआ, and they become all right. जो मॉडरेट केसेस हैं इसमें, उसमें सैचुरेशन ड्रॉप कर सकती है, पर सैचुरेशन घर पे चेक करना बच्चों के, स्पेशली छोटे बच्चों में थोड़ा टफ होता है. Above 10 years, definitely they can check.
Thank you.
जरूरत generally नहीं पड़ेगी. Or we can tell them to count respiratory rate, but actually it is not practical. So it is best कि वो clinical बच्चे पे नजर रखें, and fever is very, very important marker.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia. Moving on to Dr. Sagar. Dr. Sagar, we have been hearing of this, usual cases that reach MIS stage. First of all, many of our audience would not even know. I also didn't know until I was told by someone, about this. So is there any specific age group? You can just briefly explain as to what MIS is, and are there any common factors of the kids that get onto this stage? And what is the impact, and when to go for consultation, if at all? What is the symptom, and when to go for consultation for this MIS situation, and how severe it could be, or how it can be got over, with the own power, or own mindset.
Thank you, Mr. Garg, and thank you, ICMA, for providing this opportunity. First of all, as Mr. Garg said that आपने सुना नहीं है, मतलब you have not heard about it. It itself tells me that you know that it is a rare complication. It's not a common thing, and that's why most people must not have even heard about this problem. So let me put a few things into perspective. For last 50 years, medical science knows of a disease called Kawasaki disease. These are young children. They come with high fevers, red eyes, tongue that looks like a strawberry, we called it strawberry tongue, and rashes over the body. And this was first described in Japan. They called it Kawasaki. We do see in Indian children Kawasaki disease. And these children can have damage to the heart blood vessels. Now, what happened a year ago was that a few children, after having developed COVID, a month or 2 months later, started showing very similar symptoms. High fevers, red eyes, rashes over the body. And we all thought, oh, this is Kawasaki disease coming up in a child. But this was post-COVID. That means a child, as ma'am said, asymptomatic COVID. A child has recovered out of COVID. He didn't even know that he had COVID probably. But a month later, body's reaction to COVID produces antibodies. And it is these antibodies which are causing these symptoms. But let me tell you, this is a rare complication. Less than 1%, or I would say less than 0.5% of children develop this complication. Now, what parents should remember, if your child has got high fever along with red eyes, if your child has got high fever with a red looking, angry looking tongue, there is severe pain abdomen or rashes over the body, you must seek a doctor's consult immediately. This is probably one place in COVID where you cannot wait and watch. You will take immediate opinion from your pediatrician. Second good thing about this disease is, although this is one of the severe complication, 50% or I would say more than these number of children need hospitalization. But if you treat them in time, almost 99% of children recover. In fact, we have seen quite a few number in the last wave, and we are seeing lot many in this wave, but then all recovered. So the only message I want to give you is that if you have a child who has got fever, rashes, red eyes, unbearable pain abdomen, think about this disease. Don't sit at home. Take a consultation, and this child may need an urgent treatment. And usually this is not seen in younger children. Most often we have seen this in children above 8 or above 10. So 10 to 15 or 10 to 16 has been the most common age group for this problem.
Thank you, Dr. Sagar. So I think ये बहुत मतलब नाम थोड़ा डेंजरस लगता है, लेकिन उतना नहीं है अगर उस पर ध्यान दिया जाए समय से. सो यदि बुखार है, जीभ लाल हो जाती है और आंखें लाल हैं, तो थोड़ा सा जल्दी कंसल्टेशन करने से इसको कंट्रोल में रखा जा सकता है. थैंक यू.
We call it bloodshot eyes.
Yeah, Dr. Sonia.
In this, we call this bloodshot eyes. And this is classically we say it is bloodshot eyes without a discharge, because in conjunctivitis also we can have red eyes, but this is red eyes without a discharge. So we call it bloodshot eyes.
Okay.
So this is the pathognomic of Kawasaki disease, which Dr. Sagar just mentioned.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to Dr. Mamta Mittal, on the case of, say, pregnant women, what are the extra precautions that they need to take? How safe is it for expecting females to go to hospitals for any regular checks like ultrasound and other checks? And what if they are tested positive before the delivery? Are there any medications to be followed pre and post delivery? And are there any chances of premature delivery in case of expecting mothers being COVID positive? And what are the chances of positive mothers delivering a baby who is COVID positive again?
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Singh, for making me a part of this discussion. So it's a rather big question with 3-4 parts to it. Let me address them one by one. So we start with, pregnancy by itself is a stress condition for the body. With or without COVID, the body is working 24/7, creating a new life. So any infection in pregnancy tends to become a higher risk infection. So pregnancy is a high risk condition for COVID as well. And if there are associated comorbidities, then pregnancy becomes a very high risk condition. Almost 5% of pregnant patients are have a severe disease and need ICU admission. And it becomes even more difficult if the patient is more than 20 weeks pregnant. If the patient is less than 20 weeks pregnant, then the chances of COVID becoming severe are less. And as regard your question, how many times the patient should be visiting the hospital? So the WHO says that every pregnant patient should visit at least once in every trimester. So that means at least 3 visits. First visit before 12 weeks. And then there is a very important ultrasound to be done at 12 weeks, which detects probable mental retardation in the baby. And then the second visit at around to 18 weeks, where we again have a very important ultrasound, which detects malformations in the baby. And then a third visit nearing term around 36 weeks. So at least 3 visits are a must. And here I must emphasize that if a pregnant woman has fever, or even if she's having mild symptoms of COVID, she must visit a doctor. Saying that these are mild symptoms and I will be all right, because mild deteriorating to severe may not take much time in pregnancy. And what was your next question to that? Yeah, and you were asking about transmission to the baby.
Yeah.
So this virus does not cross the placental barrier, which means if a pregnant woman gets COVID, the virus does not cross the placenta and infect the baby. So the baby will not have COVID in utero. That is, while the baby is inside the mother's uterus, the baby will not be infected. But once the baby is delivered, once the baby comes out, then the baby has chances of getting infection from the environment as anybody else. So in the first wave, we did not see many infections in the baby, but the second wave is more infective. We are seeing more mothers and more neonates being infected. As Dr. Sonia has just said, that small children can also be infected, newborns can also be infected if the mother is infected.
Dr. Sonia, once, as Dr. Mamta said, that if a newborn baby is delivered from a COVID positive mother, then how to manage a newborn baby, and what extra care mothers need to take post delivery for the kid, for the
This is a great question. Most of our parents are worried, and we are having a good number of pregnant women who are contracting COVID in last few weeks of pregnancy, because of which we as pediatricians have to be alert. But let me reassure you, we had at least 40 to 50 COVID positive mothers who delivered at our center, and we had not had single complication. So what we do, we tell all our parents that we will be, continue to give breastfeed to children, but mother would wear a mask while feeding the baby. We would try, if someone, in their family who is not infected, they can, take care of other needs of children except breastfeeding, which will be taken care by mother. So mother has to continue breastfeeding while wearing mask. While handling, she has to maintain hand hygiene. That means she has to, wash her hands properly and handle the baby. But as Dr. Mamta already said, vertical transmission, that means in utero transmission, that the baby does not to a mother who is positive from COVID, generally babies, we have observed that they are not contracting infection in utero. That means while they are inside. Once they come out, they have similar risk as any other child in the family, because as she said, environment. Because if mother is positive, there is a high chances that your other family members would also be positive. So that is how the risk to child is. And in fact, we do as a protocol, every child is subjected to RT-PCR test who is delivered through a COVID positive mother on second or third day before they go home. We keep these children first day nursery, observe. If there's no issue, we shift them to the parents. Mother is breastfeeding these children. We do an RT-PCR and we have told them all to report back if there is any problem in form of fever, poor feeding, or any issue if the child becomes low. But none of our parents have. And so probably it is quite safe, at least for newly delivered parents. We have not had any single casualty or single child who is having problem.
Okay. And,
so it's pretty safe, and they have to continue breastfeeding.
So that means if
wearing mask on.
If the mother is COVID positive, she can.
I'm audible?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
I was audible. I'm sure. I don't know. I just
yes,
saw
you're audible. You're audible. Yeah.
So that means if the mother is COVID positive, she can continue to feed the baby.
Yes, she can continue to feed baby. Only thing is we do an RT-PCR test for the baby on second or third day. Initially, the protocol was to do on first day and then third day, but now the guidelines have changed. They are evolving every day. And now it is on the second or third day when the mother is about to get discharged, we do an RT-PCR test. And whatever the report, whether it is positive, negative, we tell them to keep the baby at home with breastfeeding. There are no other issues. And generally, we have not found any issues.
Dr. Sagar, has COVID got any extraordinary effect or anything on any special children?
Yeah, Mr. Garg, before I take up your question, I need to answer one question which is repeatedly coming in the chat box, and that is about the immune boosters. I am an immunologist, so I would want to reiterate the fact that people are spending a huge number of time on Google and spending money and their energies on immune boosters. मैं सिंपल में ये बोलता हूँ सबको कि जब आप बचपन में थे, जो आपके माँ बाप ने आपको खिलाया तो आप बहुत तंदुरुस्त हो गए. You have been healthy because your parents have fed you well. So feed healthy diet to your children, irrespective of the age. A healthy cooked meal at home cannot replace any immune booster, and there is nothing called immune boosting. The word immune boosting itself is a big myth. It is a marketing gimmick, and don't please fall prey for it. If your mother or father has cooked a healthy meal, and that will become the best immune booster for you. And if you can cut down the junk food, junk means kachra, then you are boosting your immunity, right? So let us not discuss immune boosters further on the chat box. Now, sorry, I deviated. So you are asking about special children. Yeah, I would say special children in the sense, children who have some special needs or children who are on continuous medical therapy. All these would be, I would put them under that category. I deal with children with immunodeficiencies, children who have autoimmune diseases or rheumatology problems. So these children are actually on years together of treatment. So I feel COVID has not only has direct impact on these children, but indirect impact. Now, what do I mean by direct impact? Direct would mean COVID infecting these children. Yes, that is a possibility, but we have not seen that these children are disproportionately getting infected or disproportionately becoming very sick. Maybe because they are taking that extra precaution because they know that they are at risk. So number wise, it has not been scary to tell that if you are immunocompromised or if you have special needs, you are at a very, very high risk for COVID. No, that is not the truth. But unfortunately, their regular care has got affected. The indirect impact has been huge. A lot of our patients who used to travel distances have not been able to reach us. They have missed their routine consultation and routine medications. Yes, the virtual platform for consultation has made it little easy, but I don't believe parents sitting in villages or remote places are having that capabilities to really access this. So I would say yes, it has had impact both directly and indirectly. But the good thing is these children are not really at a very, very high risk of getting severe COVID, and the management protocol still essentially remains the same.
Dr. Ananya, I think while, we talk of COVID, direct effects, how to, take care of it directly. I think one of the very important points is the mindset. And, how we see that, people are more worried, ladies are more worried about, what will happen to children, and especially in pregnant women. So how to manage the anxiety of, how the pregnant ladies can have to manage their anxiety in these times, because some of them may turn positive. At the same time, some are worried about getting positive, because of the environment. So how to manage this anxiety? I find this a very big pressure on the ladies these days.
Thank you so much for that. That is a very pertinent question. As it already has been discussed, pregnant women need to follow all the same precautions which anybody else is following. That is one thing that needs to be remembered. But what we have to understand is that pregnancy in itself is a major life event for a woman. It has implications on her physical endurance and her mental state. So, and when a woman is pregnant, she is not just anxious about her own health, she's also equally or much more anxious about the life that she's carrying within herself. So it is understandable that a pregnant woman would feel more anxious than maybe the general population, because she feels responsible for not just her own health. She has a baby and she's all the time worried about, what if I get COVID? How will it affect my baby? How will it affect my process of the pregnancy and delivery and so on? So the other challenging aspect with pregnancy is that we usually shy away from giving medications in pregnancy. We try to avoid psychotropic medications as far as possible, and we try to deal with the psychological symptoms with as much of psychotherapeutic and non-pharmacological methods. So the first and foremost thing in allaying or reducing the anxiety in pregnant women is proper information. Often the stress is coming out of a lot of misperception, miscommunication, and lot of inauthentic information derived from WhatsApp groups, from sources which are not really the true authentic medical sources. So the most important thing is for a pregnant woman to talk to their gynecologist, who is obstetrician, who's taking care of their pregnancy, and find out what all they should be doing and what all they need to follow, because that is the only thing that we have in our control, what we can do, that is within our circle of influence. The rest, we cannot really stall the pandemic, or if a pregnant woman needs to go to the doctor for an antepartum visit, she needs to go, that's period. We cannot really avoid it. But what she can do is wear proper masks, maintain physical distancing, and take all the precautions which are required to prevent infection in her, in case she's exposing herself to a clinic or a hospital, wherever or they are doing. So that is one thing, because right now we are facing something what is called an infodemic. We have too much information and not all of it is actionable, and often a lot of it is anxiety provoking. So just like now, this particular discussion has cleared so many myths about COVID symptoms in children not being as serious as maybe people were thinking, or in pregnancy. So once you get the proper information, you can act upon it. And other than that, we in the first trimester or the second trimester, we often ask women to do breathing exercises, because it's still easier for them to do it. You can take long deep breathing inspire for 4 seconds, then hold it for 4 seconds, and then gradually breathe out over a period of 6 to 7 seconds through the mouth. That can be, it should not be done too much. You should do it for not more than 3 to 4 minutes at a time. But if you have severe anxiety symptoms like palpitation, or you're feeling restless, or you're constantly getting thoughts about illness or negative thoughts, so this can sort of help you deal with it in a non-pharmacological way. The other thing would be that, and it is something that we are telling not just pregnant women, but everybody, is to stay away from social media, to, digitally detox, that's the term being used, or social media distancing, where you too much exposure to COVID related news, to COVID related deaths, to pictures of people suffering, that also sort of catastrophizes the whole situation for you and makes things look far worse than it probably is, because only the negative news reaches the media. The media is not showing the proportion of people who are improving, which is much, much more actually. So stay away from negative exposure to illness, and stay informed, and follow all of the things related to health and nutrition, whatever the obstetrician is instructing to the pregnant lady, because that is finally what will have impact on their physical health and physical well-being. So these are the major things that we are telling a pregnant woman. And amongst these women, a small proportion of women might go on to suffer from very severe symptoms amounting to a diagnosis of clinical depression or clinical anxiety, which requires expert treatment, that is, which requires evaluation and treatment from a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So they should definitely seek medical help. And the warning signs for these people who are suffering from a severe degree of illness or a diagnosable psychiatric condition would be sleeplessness, severe insomnia, loss of appetite, crying spells, suicidal thoughts, or sometimes people may make attempts, that so we need to watch out for that. Severe palpitations, feeling panic attacks. So if women are suffering from such symptoms, then we have to understand that they have progressed to a state of clinical depression or clinical anxiety, which requires more evaluation and treatment, and then they can either be referred by the obstetricians, or they can seek help from a psychiatrist for further, because it has a direct consequence on the pregnancy and the process of childbirth. So it needs to be caught early and intervened on at as early as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Ananya. Dr. Mamta, we talked about the lactating mothers, and that they can continue to feed the children, but can they continue to remain on medication as well while they are feeding the infants?
Yes. Absolutely, they can. They can, because all the medicines that we are giving is safe. When we give any medicine to a pregnant lady or to a lady who is breastfeeding, we always ensure that the medicines that she is getting are safe. She can continue to breastfeed.
Okay, and if there is a non-COVID, I'm saying normal mother, can she go for a vaccination if she is breastfeeding?
Yes, sure. So vaccination is a very important topic and very close to my heart. So I'll take 2 minutes to talk about it. So a few days back in the social media, there were messages going around saying that girls who are having their periods should not go in for vaccination, which is absolutely wrong. A girl can take vaccination any time of the cycle. And then there were some doubts whether a patient who has been vaccinated, will it affect her capability to produce eggs in the very cycle and later on. So I want to say that it does not cause infertility at all, either in males or in females. It is a very, very safe vaccine. And if a patient is thinking of getting pregnant, she can go and get herself vaccinated. And if she conceives immediately after vaccination, then also it will not harm her baby. But you see, it's a very new vaccine, new disease. And up till now, we have not had any case of teratogenicity produced because of the vaccine. But then I've said we've only been vaccinating for 6-7 months. We started end of November in the world. UK started it first. And so it will be difficult. All the data that we have is on the experimental animals, and but it is quite a safe vaccine and no case of teratogenicity has been reported as yet with this vaccine. So even pregnant ladies can take it. And when I'm saying that pregnant ladies can take it, let me tell you that FDA approves a drug or a vaccine in pregnancy after it's been there for 20 years, so that they can study the effect on the children, on adults. You know, sometimes there is a late effect. So with the vaccine, this disease is a pandemic, and therefore they've given approval for pregnant ladies. Yes, a mother who is breastfeeding can take vaccination any time after delivery, and maybe the antibodies will be passed on to the baby through the milk. Just a conjecture. Not many studies have been done. Nothing has been proven, but it will most definitely help the mother. So I personally think that everybody should be vaccinated. I'm requesting everyone, please go and get yourself vaccinated.
Very good.
Thank you. Coming on to back to you, Dr. Ananya. You know, with all this happening around us, the mental state of adults has been greatly impacted, and there is an emotional stress and turmoil, and we are all going through it today. In such a situation, apparently the kids are at home and seem to be enjoying themselves, but somewhere getting locked at home is impacting them adversely. How to manage this? Because I see it in my own home also. You know, so we have to keep the kids engaged. So how to, balance this mindset? Because kids are just, asking to let them free.
Yeah, absolutely. The answer of this question would, we have to intervene with children based on at which level of the developmental trajectory they are. That meaning that what we will do for a 2 or 3 year old or an under 5 child will be different from what we will do for an adolescent or a teenager and so on. So yes, you're very right that current situation is unprecedented and unnatural for child rearing, because children do not just need to go to school to learn, they need it for peer interaction, for learning pro-social behaviors, to go out, they need to go out and play, they need to be outdoors. And unfortunately, since last 1 year, they've not been able to do all of that. And it is having a sort of adverse impact on kids, which even we are seeing in the clinic right now. So if we talk about very young children, that is under 5 children, less than 5 years of age, it is important for the parents to find some quality time of bonding with these children, to give them the sort of sensory and physical stimulation which in normal circumstances they would have otherwise gotten. That is meaning, under normal circumstances, the child probably would have been going to the park or playing with similar aged children or going to a preschool or nursery and so on. But right now, since they're not able to do that, it is, although I understand that parents are taxed enough with chores and work from home and many other things, but since it is very, very essential for the development of a child, it is important for them to find out at least an hour or a couple of hours or so where they sit and actually play with the child, or if it's the age where a child's vocabulary or language is developing, they need to read to the child, show them books with pictures, or if it's possible to play some sort of physical game, whatever is possible within the confines of the house and while maintaining safety. So that is what parents should do for younger kids, that is children less than 5 years of age, because they need that kind of stimulation for their growth, because they're still achieving these milestones, and often this could lead to an adverse circumstance there. For older children, children in the age of adolescence, teenagers, I was recently working with some kids of class 10th, 11th and 12th, and they themselves came out with this fact that they're having a lot of screen overload. All of their online learning is through a screen. Their social interaction with their friends is through their phone screen, through Snapchat or Instagram or WhatsApp and so on. So that much of screen time for children is not good for their attention and concentration, not good for their vision. It's not good for their sleep. It's really not good for their sleep hygiene. The blue light of the mobile screens have been shown to cause sleep disturbances, and it's also a reason because of which they're not able to concentrate, they're not able to sustain their attention. So it is important for parents to find some activities at home where they're off this, of their digital media, of their technological space. So some sort of activity, maybe gardening or whatever that every family has to figure out for themselves. There need to be some socially connected activity at home with whoever is physically present around these children, which does not involve technology or media. Secondly, parents are also very, very stressed and overwrought at this point of time. They have to do the chores, they have to work from home, their work-home boundaries are blurred. They also have to take care of the children and their academics because they're not going to the school. So often we sometimes displace our frustration or our anger onto who is around, and it's all usually our children, and it's also vice versa. So it is something that is happening and causing familial conflicts, causing a lot of social stress within families. So we need to address that. Parents are, it's possible that sometimes we displace that anger or negative emotion onto our children, and it's all right at some point of time. But if it is happening, then you need to sit and talk to your child, especially the older children, because children tend to retaliate by acting out, by being oppositional or defiant in certain such situations. So you also need to involve them in the current, especially the older children, because they are old and sensitive enough to understand what's happening. So if you're stressed with your work, with your other responsibilities, it is all right to also share it with your child. Make your child an active participant in the process. Your child is not just a passive recipient of your care. And when children feel that sense of agency and that sense of involvement, often they actually develop better resilience, and they're able to cope better, because then they can make sense of what is happening, why you are overworked, why you are stressed, rather than taking it upon themselves or attributing it to themselves. So it is important to stay connected, not just look after the health and basic sustenance need of your child, nutrition, health, all of that is paramount, that is given, but it is also important to really connect with your child, to talk to them, to find some space to bond, to share their anxieties and share your anxieties as well with them. And that sort of improves communication channels, that reassures both you and your child, and it helps to reduce some of the behavioral problems that we are seeing in children nowadays, especially anger.
Yeah. Here I would like to add one thing, Ananya. I think, why are we talking all stress? I don't know. I have been 15 months, I have been going to hospital regularly. I have been doing all clinics with all precautions, and I'm enjoying at home. I think we never had so much of time as parents with our kids, especially working parents, Our work has decreased. Why are we stressed? We should enjoy this family time.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I tell all my parents, please don't take it as this God has given you time, that you be with your family, enjoy with your family. I tell my parents, play Ludo, play, whatever game your child is capable of. Why are we talking all gloomy things? Let's, this phase which we have got, we have never had this much of free time in our, life.
Absolutely.
Although all of us are professionals and we have been busy and we have been working, but let's admit that we had more spare time during this pandemic, because our, commuting time was cancelled. And somehow, even in hospital, at least at senior consultant levels, we did not have that much of work. Our regular OPDs. In fact, here I would like to bring one important point, that since COVID pandemic, let me tell you, my general OPD of sick children has gone down to 5%, because children are not going to school. Children, the parents are not going anywhere. Parents are masked. So none of the diseases are happening. In fact, children are much more safe in COVID. In fact, most of our pediatrician groups, we are so free these days that we are chatting all day along, because children have been very safe. They are not going to schools. Parents have restricted to, restaurant food and everything is restricted. And I think we should enjoy this time in our face. We are not going to get it again. I mean, it's not a good thing to celebrate, but at least let's make positive of it. Why should we
On a
talk
lighter-
negative all the time?
On a lighter mode, your husbands are also at home now, right? They're also spending good time.
Yeah, we are spending good time, but you see, the general patients have gone down, especially in children. Our OPDs have, other diseases like pneumonia, diarrhea, the viral flus, which we used to get, have practically disappeared. I'm telling you, disappeared is the word. Because children are masked, parents are masked, they are not going out, schools are not open, they are not going anywhere. So other diseases have actually gone down. And this is the time I tell all my parents, रात को 1 घंटा तो निकाल सकते हो, कितने भी working हो, 1 घंटा खेलो, family time करो. That is how you can help your children. At the same time, you discuss and be role model and tell them the precautions and what all you are also doing. And we have to be role model. So when we are going out of house, we should be wearing masks properly, and we should take precautions ourselves. But I think it's not all that gloomy. Definitely, children are coming to me as pediatrician that children are getting worried. They keep seeing their saturation and they start panicking. Some children are complaining they're having pain abdomen. Some children are faking seizures sort of thing also. We do get a lot of cases. But what I'm telling my parents that please spend more time with them, give them more time, because they are they're not playing with other siblings or kids in the so they are just bored. So try to make some family time, do virtual, meetings with their friends, tell them to do virtual meetings, and, make this time, happier time instead of bad time. And I personally feel once the lockdown goes off, and instead of taking your child to a mall or, somewhere out for an outing, take the child to park, because this would definitely give them some natural this thing. You can be wearing mask, your child can be wearing mask. And at least, your child can have some outdoor games, because that is what the obesity is, increasing in children during this pandemic, because they're just eating, they're not moving. So what I would advise, another thing is that if you have access to a roof or something, you have a roof in your house and you have some, open areas, tell them to play, or, inculcate some hobbies like dancing and all. So let your child do something positive in form of physical activity also. And later also, parks would be definitely safer than malls and all, because they are open areas and there will be some dilution of virus. And if you're masked and you're playing, I think it will be still safe if they're not coming too close. But that education you have to give to your children right now.
Sir, over to you.
Yeah, while we are discussing this subject, one of the questions which is coming in everybody's mind, especially for infants, when do we expect, are we going to have some special vaccine for infants, Dr. Mittal, Sonia Mittal? This is my question to you.
I just now had this thing in Bharat. Biotech is conducting trials on children, but the trials are starting from 2 years of age. They have made 3 groups, 2 to 6 years, 6 to 12 years, and 12 to 18 years. And so the trials are underway. First phase is over. 2 phases are still remaining, which they are expecting 3 to 4 months it will take. But we don't know if the third wave, as the speculations are going on, if it comes or if children are getting really badly affected. We don't know. Last time also, Covaxin was released after phase 2 only. The government did not wait, because generally, if the disease per se is very risky, then the vaccines can be released earlier. But definitely, coming back to your question, not below 2 years. Although Pfizer has released above 6 months, but Covaxin, which is conducting trials in India, will not release it below 2 years. But as Dr. Mamta already said, if mothers are vaccinated, if young parents are vaccinated, so one, through breastfeeding, they may pass antibodies to the infant babies whom they are breastfeeding. And secondly, if parents are protected, the child does not go out. In fact, I tell all my parents, and in my clinic, I see if a COVID positive child comes and I take the history, it is 90 to 95% the family member has given to the child. I hardly see any child giving COVID to the family. So as a family, we have to be responsible. We should take all precautions so that our children are not affected. So as I said, my practical experience, children are not giving COVID to parents. Parents are giving COVID to babies. So parents vaccinated, parents following COVID appropriate behavior, children will be spared.
Right. Thank you very much. You just talked about, in fact, you just touched in your answer that there is a speculation that next wave, third wave, which we expect at sometime in the month of September or October, everybody is worried. Parents are worried that this is going to impact children more. This is the kind of fear which is, the kind of speculation which is going around in the market. Is there any substance behind it? What are your comments on this?
Yeah. See, what generally all these pandemic, they come in waves. So we had first wave in September, October. Our active cases went down considerably low. In fact, in February, I was seeing the statistics. It had come down to all over India around 8 to 10,000 cases per day. So which was very, very low. Then we became lenient. We became overconfident. Few of us were vaccinated. Few of us had natural infection. We stopped taking COVID appropriate behavior practices. We started meeting in religious on religious gatherings or marriage or social gatherings, and it again blew up. So any pandemic to settle will undergo these cycles. So pandemic will keep coming in these cycles, but we have to be prepared. Whom it will affect, that there is a lot of speculation going on that kids would be affected, but that is basically because kids are not going to be vaccinated. Because if the next wave comes, we know that at least our adults, quite a good number of adults should be covered when the third wave hits, and kids would not be vaccinated by that time. So that is why it is being speculated that kids would be hit the most. But anyway, looking behind the statistics, see, I was checking the statistics, even as I said, they are mostly mild or asymptomatic. I was checking the statistics, it was 0.1 to 1.9% of children require admission. Admission rate is 1.1 to 1.9%, and mortality is 0.02 to 0.03%, which is actually very, very low. So the third wave will hit children, because they are gullible pool, they were not vaccinated, so they may get more infection. But how hard it will hit? That means, will they become sick? Because as I said, children have good immune response, and they are able to, fight with this disease better than us. So they will be infected definitely, but will they be sick? That is, we have to see. And going by the statistics in last two waves, we have not had much of mortality or morbidity in children. So hopefully, even if third wave comes, we have to be prepared but not scared. We have to prepare ourselves, we have to educate ourselves and our family, and try to get vaccinated as early as possible, because that is the way forward to protect ourselves from this virus.
If I may add, I think if I may add one thing for sure, I believe that unless our kids get vaccinated, which I believe should happen in next 3-4 months, probably schooling physical would not be.
That's very true. School should not be open.
Practical option now, because even if kids get infected, the spreading would happen only when they go out and spread the medium. So there has been speculation. Nobody can predict whether we'll get the next wave. If you look at other countries, most of the countries, even US has had at least 3-4 waves. So there is no reason to believe we may not have, but then the situation is very different. They did not have vaccination. We are now having vaccination. So you cannot directly extrapolate of what is happening outside. But then, yes, I believe unless kids get vaccinated, we should not be really thinking about physical schooling, because even if the wave comes, then they would be at maximum risk.
And plus, they will be super spreaders. They will, they will not have symptoms, and by the time the family realizes, the family gets infected with COVID.
Yes, but countries which are following COVID appropriate behavior and are strict about it have not even had a second wave.
Yeah, that's what. So that's what I'm saying. Vaccination and COVID appropriate behavior. These two things are going to save us.
Yeah, you're right. So thank you very much. Over to Deepak. Please carry on.
Okay, I have a question, last question for Dr. Ananya. That post COVID recovery, anxiety, depression, and stress is a key challenge being faced by a large number of people. And I think this is going to continue for a while. So how should such post-COVID psychological issues be handled? Because it's right, not only for men, it is there for majorly for ladies also, for kids also. So how to handle these psychological issues?
Right. Not just post-COVID, I think just the diagnosis of COVID per se is causing a lot of panic in people, even people who have relatively mild illness and can be managed at home, because they have to stay in isolation, because they're hearing of people having so much of severe complications, they're freaking out when they could just rest, and they don't really need to, majority of the people don't need to do much. They just have to rest, take their medications, and just wait it out, and it's just going away. So also during COVID, while you are suffering from COVID or a family member is suffering from COVID, what we are seeing is more of acute stress reactions, acute anxiety reactions, a lot of what ifs from the patient and their family members. So what we are advising is follow what your physician is asking you to do, follow these isolation, the quarantine, so that more family members do not get affected, and they need to take adequate rest. Fatigue is one thing which I think even post COVID, as post viral fatigue is as such known even with other viral fevers, but in COVID, a lot of patients are reporting of severe fatigue, which is protracted, which is remaining for a couple of weeks, going much slowly than they expected. And it is causing a lot of dysphoria in them, because they want to bounce back, they want to go back to their normal level of functioning, and they're not able to do it because of it. And they're getting frustrated and they're feeling, I'm still not all right. So we are asking people who are recovering from COVID or who have just had COVID to take things slow, take adequate rest, take care of your nutrition. Don't do very intense sort of physical exertion. A little bit of physical ambulation is important. It's necessary. We're asking patients that you should walk around in your house, in your compound, but trying to just jump into your routine and go back to where you were before, that's not a very good idea. It's becoming stressful and overwhelming for the patients. So that is one thing that we're asking. Take things slow, take time for recovery, take this time to, sort of unwind, do certain things which you maybe wanted to do, maybe read a book, maybe just relax, the kind of leisure activities which I think Dr. Sonia was also telling, that this is also the time to catch up on so many things which we sort of miss out in our normal day-to-day routine. So take things slow, take care of your nutrition. And the other aspect is for people, post-COVID, people who have recovered but have lost family members. This is a major issue. A lot of people are going through grief, and a very accelerated sort of grief without closure, because we are not able to say our final goodbyes to our significant family members because of the isolation, because of the infectivity and so on. So it is very important to find that closure. One thing that really helps with closure is our rituals. Every culture, every religion has its death rituals after the departing of a family member, all of which we are not able to do at this point of time. So we are asking patients to do some sort of ritual, something to stimulate. Maybe you cannot have a prayer meet physically at home, but gathering people over a online forum or something of that sort is kind of helping people to get, give that sort of dignity to somebody who's gone and find that closure. It's very important to find that closure. Second thing is of survivor's guilt, that is often seen after any sort of, not just pandemic, any sort of, disaster, natural or man-made calamity, that people who live on, they feel that we did not do enough for our family members, or maybe we did not try hard enough. That sort of thing again can lead on to depression or anxiety. So again, it is important to accept, to reconcile, and to reset your life, see what is there, and rather than focusing on what is not. There is something that, especially this is something, this is a psychological technique which has been used in many things, but has now kind of gathered importance in this particular scenario, is that of gratitude journaling. There is something that we tell people to do at the end of the day when we are feeling that everything is negative or everything is going against and we are at complete loss of control. At the end of each day, just sit back. Even if you don't actually write it down in a journal, just sit back and reflect on all the things that you have to be thankful for. And if we consciously do that, we'll actually find that there are many positives which we have at this point of time. And holding on to that helps with resilience, helps with self-efficacy and recovery in general.
Thank you, Dr. Ananya. Just I think we are just running out of time now. So a quick comment from each one of our panelists. So starting with you, Dr. Sagar, I know you have to join another panel. So please, starting with you for your final comments, please.
Nothing. I would say, as Madam said, Dr. Mittal said, "Ye waqt bhi guzar jayega." So I think it is all about living through this moment. Let's be positive. There is hope in the end. And you can see one miracle happened, that we had a vaccine within a year. Nobody would believe somebody in 2020, even if doctors were asked whether there would be vaccine. In fact, I said there is no possibility of having vaccine so fast. So there was a miracle that happened, and I'm sure more miracles will happen. This is tough time. But I think if we do the right things, and if we maintain that COVID appropriate behavior for next 1 year, we all are going to come out of this.
Okay. Dr. Mamta, final comments from you.
I would again emphasize the importance of vaccination. Please go and get yourself and your family members vaccinated. Wear a mask and maintain a safe distance. And again, repeating what I've already said, that countries where majority of the population has gone along with COVID appropriate behavior and have been wearing masks, have not even had a second wave, So we can avoid a third wave if all of us wear masks and go out of the house only if it is very, very essential. And if all of us get vaccinated, it will be good.
Thank you, Dr. Mamta. Dr. Ananya?
I would just say 2-3 things. First is stay informed. Misinformation is one of the biggest source of stress right now. If you get the proper information, you will be much more at peace. Second is focus on what you can do rather than what is beyond your control. We cannot say when this pandemic will end, if this pandemic will end, but we can wear our mask properly. We can take what is called the COVID appropriate, do the COVID appropriate behaviors, and that is enough. So focus on what you can do. And third is stay connected. We have now moved away from the term social distancing and changed it to physical distancing. We need to stay socially connected. Man is a social being and we are all in it together. So if we are emotionally connected with each other, we can brave through this together. So these are the 3 things that I want to say. And I think we will sort of survive this pandemic.
Dr. Sonia.
Yeah, I think everybody has said very correctly, ye waqt bhi guzar jayega. We try to make positive of it and vaccinate and just stay safe, stay home and stay informed. I think that is the only way we are going to stay forward, and we should try to help each other, surrounding us in whatever way we can. We should try to help each other and, just educate and stay safe. I think that's the main, which we will carry us forward.
Okay. I now request Mr. Sandeep Singh, President ICMA, to please make the concluding remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak. And my really very good discussion today we had. This was a very important topic which was chosen by Secretariat, thanks to Seema and Pramita. Women and child healthcare, as you know, that they both children and women, they are very, very important part of any family. And there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of fear in everybody's mind with regard to younger children, elder children, or women if they are pregnant, what kind of care we need to take. So today we could discuss varied issues in this discussion. So I would like to really thank Dr. Sonia, Dr. Mamta, Dr. Sagar, and Dr. Ananya, and some of the words which we use, that digitally detox. I think this is a very, very important what she said today. Be positive, stay connected, which are all softer issues which are very, very important in a life. Be positive, enjoy your life with your family. These are very important things. The other aspect which I would like, today we are getting very good feedback from the participants and people who are connected with us, that how we can generate awareness about all this COVID appropriate behavior, whether it is social distance, mask, and stay away from crowded people. And the most important is vaccination. How can we generate awareness of all these things in tier 2 and tier 3 cities? Because over there, the challenges are going to be much more, and they are facing acute shortage of all these support systems. So I think it is a duty to generate awareness. So through this forum or in any forum, if we can generate awareness to villages and semi-urban areas, that would be really great. So once again, thank you very much, and we will continue with this series, and I'm sure soon we will have an opportunity to interact with you again. Thank you very much. Very grateful.